Hello, today we will be talking a little bit about the introduction of Fred in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Now, on my version, this begins on page 6, and we've had the introduction of Scrooge. Check out the last video if you're looking for that. We've had the introduction of Scrooge as hard and sharp as flint, who carries his own low temperature always about him, and is bitterer than the harshest wind. So we've got this idea of this isolated, cold, miserly, meaning you don't want to give out money. You're making sure that you keep what is yours. Quite a dark image of Scrooge. Somebody who won't even warm their employee in the December freeze, saying that the clerk's fire was so very much smaller it looks like just that one coal. We've got all this imagery of scarcity. And now we get something called a foil. Just like your aluminium foil at home, you could think about it that way, it's spelled exactly the same. In literature, a foil is a character that might represent the opposite of the protagonist, or any main characters, if you will. So if we've got, for example, Scrooge, this cold character, we're about to see the opposite of that. This is Dickens inserting a foil character. I'll talk a bit more about that, but let's read the introduction of Fred. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" cried a cheerful voice. Do you want to talk about structure? It's very interesting that we've got this imagery of scarcity, of the cold, them working in this counting house on Christmas Eve with the fog, and suddenly bounding into this, literally launching in with a Merry Christmas, God save you, is the cry of this cheerful voice. And it does sort of jolt us away from this miserable setting and into the idea, okay, it's Merry Christmas, it's Christmas Eve. The Christmas spirit, if you like, enters with the appearance of this next character. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation he had of his approach. So he rushes in. So Scrooge didn't know that he was coming until he was there. So he's right there. And Scrooge responds saying, "Bah," said Scrooge. "Humbug," which is a phrase he will say when he's sort of dismissing the Merry Christmas. He's dismissing the God save you. He's dismissing these well wishes by saying, "Bah, humbug." And this is a description of Fred. He had so heated himself. So again, we get this image of heat associated with Fred. With rapid walking in the fog and frost, this nephew of Scrooge's, that he was all in a glow. So Scrooge's nephew, this character, is described as all in a glow. This is a beautiful quote you can use when talking about Fred as a foil to Scrooge. So he's an opposite of Scrooge in many ways. Whereas Scrooge carries this low temperature about him, Fred is presented as all in a glow. What else glows? Well, we can think about light. Think about the time of year as well, and the belief of Christianity in angels, and how angels have a light about them, a glow about them. So there's almost this angelic, or there are angelic connotations of Fred, which is exemplified, which means exaggerated or highlighted, by the fact that he's bound into this quite dreary setting, all in a glow. His face was ruddy and handsome. If your face is ruddy, it's got that lovely blush when you've been going for a walk or something like that. So it's unlike Scrooge, who's described as having these thin blue lips and things like that, this idea of his cold within him. We get the opposite, the foil, in Fred, with this ruddy red face, and he's handsome. Again, we get the semantic field of light here, so images associated, ideas associated with light, as his eyes sparkled and his breath smoked again. So it's this idea that there's warmth inside him. So when you get that dragon's breath in the winter, it's our inner heat coming out. So straight away, we get all these beautiful connotations of Fred. So he's light, he's angelic, he's ruddy, in a glow. That's a great quote, all in a glow. Humbug, uncle, said Scrooge's nephew. You don't mean that, I am sure. I do, said Scrooge. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough. So what Scrooge is saying here is he's directly correlating, which is a way of associating. He's associating being poor, so he's associating monetary need or not having excessive wealth with not being merry, being happy. Merry is another word for happy. So he's saying, why are you? What reason have you to be happy when you're poor? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough. So we see this direct association that Scrooge makes between money and happiness. Come then, returned the nephew gaily, another word for happily. What right have you to be dismal? Dismal's another word for sort of sad, down in the dumps, if you will. What reason have you to be morose? Morose, a kind of word for a sense of depression, if you will, a sense of melancholy. You're rich enough. So the nephew plays with Scrooge here a little bit, where he's saying, well, why are you upset? Because you're rich. He's playing Scrooge's logic up against him. Scrooge, having no better answer ready, on the spur of the moment, said, bah, again, and followed it up with humbug. Make sure when you're writing about it, guys, if you're talking about this instance of bar humbug, there's a bah, which is kind of a dismissive, like, noise, almost grunt, if you like, from Scrooge, and then humbug. Dismissing. Don't be cross, uncle, said the nephew. What else can I be, returned the uncle, when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas. So, he's suggesting that he's cross. Scrooge is suggesting he's cross because he lives in a world of fools. If you're foolish, it means you're not logical. You do silly things. He's suggesting that he lives in a world of fools. Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money, a time for finding yourself a year older but not an hour richer, a time for balancing your books and having every item in 'em through a round dozen of months presented dead against you? If I could work my will, said Scrooge indignantly. So Scrooge is going forward, he's rushing forward with this thought. Every idiot who goes about with a Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart, he should. So, I think this is an interesting moment from Scrooge. Because what we get from Scrooge here is a rejection of Christmas. Christmas is going to become very important and symbolic. When we think about Christmas, and at the time of recording, it's just been Christmas, and we've still got the Christmas lights up in the town and everything like that. Christmas is traditionally a time associated with celebration and godliness as well. Now, Christmas isn't so much associated, for some people, of course, it is associated with a very religious and holy festival, and this idea of celebrating God's presence on earth, with that traditionally the Christians would celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ at Christmas Day and all of the good morality and good things that Jesus came to represent to the Christian community. However, nowadays, it is still seen as a festival of joy, of jubilation, another word for joy, of getting together with loved ones, celebrating, gift giving, being generous, eating a lot. I hope all of you had a chance to eat this winter season. So the idea that Scrooge rejects everything that Christmas stands for will become symbolic here. He's rejecting Christmas, and through the rejection of Christmas, he's also rejecting all of those things that Christmas stands for. That warmth, that joy. And also he's rejecting the religious connotations of it. He's not wanting to celebrate. This is fascinating because he says every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should. This is really fascinating because I think this is funny. This is an absurd image that everyone who says Merry Christmas should be boiled with their Christmas pudding. You might have seen Christmas puddings, you might have even had a Christmas pudding over Christmas. This sort of figgy, dense, often alcoholic Christmas delicacy. He's saying that if you say Merry Christmas, you should be boiled with that pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. We'll talk a bit more about holly later. But this is an absurd, funny image. I would argue that Scrooge's character development, his characterization here is shown as a bit hopeful. So although we're seeing this character that has a low temperature always about him, at the same time, this is a character who I believe is making a joke here. Should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should. It's so absurd that it maybe suggests to me that there is maybe, and feel free to disagree with me, there is maybe hints that Scrooge has some inner warmth. Despite the fact, he's asking quite a nasty thing to happen to these people, it's the absurdity of this imagery suggests to me that maybe there's more than meets the eye. Has some inner warmth, some inner potential. That idea of that oyster, solitary as an oyster. "Uncle," pleaded the nephew. "Nephew," returned the uncle sternly. "Keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine." So he's saying, let me celebrate you celebrate Christmas in your own way, I'll keep it in my way. "Keep it?" repeated Scrooge's nephew. "But you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone then," said Scrooge. "Much good may it do you, much good it has ever done you." So he's saying, what good has Christmas done you? And this is an interesting bit. Scrooge's nephew, Fred, replies that there are many things which I might have derived good, so taken good, by which I have not profited. So Fred is saying here, folks, that there's many things that he's got out of Christmas which haven't resulted in a monetary gain. So he's derived good without gaining money. "I dare say," returned the nephew, "Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time when it has come round, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin." So he's talking here about the sacred nature of Christmas, of Christianity, and the Christianity that would have been popular in the Victorian era was they traditionally celebrated Jesus' birth on Christmas. And we can remember that through Christmas, so the coming of Christ, if you will. So he's saying, not only did I venerate it, so did I praise it and respect it, due to the fact that it's got these religious origins, these religious beginnings, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, but he's also valuing it as a good time. So the fact that Fred is saying not only is Christmas sacred, so something we should praise and worship and be respectful of, it's also a good time. And this is then a list of adjectives, which you may remember, well done if you got it, is called a syndetic listing. When we list things without conjunctions, so we're just listing like this. It's a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant. Before we flick the page, you can just write down, this is how Fred is characterizing Christmas. As all of these marvellous adjectives, which are so directly opposing Scrooge himself. Scrooge is not a charitable, pleasant, forgiving, kind person. We've had sort of the opposite of that presented. Fred continues. Time. "The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open up their shut up hearts freely. So Fred's saying this is the one time of the year when people open up their shut up hearts freely. Obviously, we can't physically open up our hearts. So what is that? That's a metaphor. And it means, you know, we open up our hearts to this season. We open up our hearts to each other. And to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. She's saying despite how much money they have or wealth or class that anyone may have, we are fellow passengers to the grave. So we're all equal at this moment at Christmas. Sorry guys, for readjusting my screen. We are all, I don't think I've got a career in YouTube. I think we can say that much so far. We are all fellow passengers to the grave. So we're all equal at Christmas. All humanity is equal at this moment. We are all together on the same journey towards death, but we open up our hearts at Christmas to each other. In the words of Fred. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, so it's never put any money in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good, and I say, God bless it. So Fred absolutely praising Christmas here. And we'll see a few characters prop up in this novella that seem to be the embodiment of Christmas. And we do see Fred in that light here, all in a glow, talking about opening up our shut up hearts. The clerk in the tank, so this is the clerk, the employee of Scrooge in this small room, involuntarily applauded. So the clerk's heard this and he's like, oh, accidentally. Becoming immediately sensible of the impropriety, so realising, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. He poked the fire and extinguished the last frail spark forever. Let me hear another sound from you, said Scrooge. He's talking to his clerk here. And you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. So he's saying, if you make another peep, Mr. Clerk, you're going to lose your job. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir, he added, turning to his nephew. I wonder you don't go into Parliament. So he's saying, oh, you know, you're a very powerful speaker. Why don't you become a politician? And the nephew pleads again. So Fred says, don't be angry, uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. So here we get a direct invitation for Scrooge to take part in Christmas. But that's not what... Scrooge is not going to go with that. Scrooge said he would see him. Yes, indeed he did. He went the whole length of the expression and said that he would see him in the extremity first. But why? Cried Scrooge's nephew. Why? Why did you get married? Said Scrooge. So Scrooge is like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to dine with him. But Scrooge says, why? Scrooge's nephew, says, why? Why won't you come and see us? And Scrooge bizarrely says, why did you get married? He's saying, well, if you're going to question me, I'm going to question your life choices. Why did you get married? And the nephew says, because I fell in love. Because you fell in love? Growled Scrooge, as if that were the only thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. So again, we've got the idea of the shut-up hearts. We get, again, this idea of love. Fred's associated with love. He's married. He married for love. And Scrooge finds the idea of marrying for love just completely ridiculous. He growls at him because you fell in love. He feels it's ridiculous. So he's like, goodbye. Nay, uncle. So no, uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now? So Scrooge is using the fact that the nephew is married as an excuse to not come for Christmas. And the nephew keeps asking him, he's giving Scrooge multiple times to change his mind here and come round for Christmas. But Scrooge is saying, good afternoon, shutting it down. The nephew responds, I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends? Good afternoon, said Scrooge. And the nephew responds, Fred responds, I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. So, okay, I'm sorry that you're so determined, resolute. You're definitely not coming for Christmas. have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party, but I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humour to the last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle. So he's keeping his Christmas humour, he's keeping his Christmas spirit. And he's still saying Merry Christmas. He's still wishing Scrooge well. Good afternoon, said Scrooge. And a Happy New Year. So Fred's just continuing the well wishes. Good afternoon, said Scrooge. His nephew left the room without an angry word notwithstanding. He stopped at the outer door to bestow the greetings of the season to the clerk, who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge. So again, the idea of having an inner temperature, and that our temperature suggests something about our character. So this clerk, who we'll later find out is called Bob Cratchit, so I'll refer to him as Bob Cratchit. This clerk is warmer than Scrooge. That suggests that despite the fact he's so cold, he still has that inner warmth, that metaphorical warmth. There's another fellow, muttered Scrooge, who overheard him. My clerk, with 15 shillings a week, and a wife and family talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam. So Bedlam was a place where they put mentally unwell people in the Victorian era. So he's saying this is, for want of a better word, he's saying this is madness. This is people have gone crazy. Obviously, I'm not saying that people who are mentally ill are crazy or anything like that, but just that's how the audience would have understood that. The idea that people have gone insane about this Merry Christmas because my clerk, who earns 15 shillings, so essentially this is minimum wage, if you like. It would have been a very small amount of money. So this clerk that he employs with 15 shillings a week, so he's got very little wages, minimum wages, but he's also got a wife and a family. So Scrooge is saying the fact that he's talking about a Merry Christmas and the fact that he's feeling warm and he's like, oh, Merry Christmas as well, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand this is madness, this is bedlam. This lunatic, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. So the clerks let the nephew out and 2 more people have come in. So it's a flurry of activity, really, for Scrooge. 2 more people come in on this Christmas Eve. And these are the portly gentlemen. We will talk more about them in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video on the introduction of Fred. Try and remember All in a Glow, and try and remember the symbolism of Scrooge rejecting this season of Christmas, a forgiving, kind, charitable, pleasant season, and what Dickens could be trying to say there.